In 1988, Kyle Crafton underwent surgery to remove scar tissue from his left hand. The routine operation was completed without any complications, and Kyle was scheduled to be discharged from the hospital the following day.
For some reason, late that night, it was like my entire body was hurting, and I couldn't ignore it. My wife was there with me, and the nurse came in. She gave me a shot of morphine, and I was out. I could still hear my heart beating, even though it was very slow. It was almost stopped. And I could still hear my breathing, but it was almost non-existent. And then the next thing I knew, I was sitting at the foot of the bed. And I was looking at my wife sitting in the chair next to the bed, and I looked at myself in the bed, not recognizing even who I was. And I got up from the bed, and I wasn't even really sure that I was out of body. And I was, at that point, fixed on a light in the hallway. And I started walking towards that light in the hallway. And then immediately I was just enveloped in black. And way off in the distance, a pinpoint of white light. And it was so subtle, it was coming towards me and I didn't know it until I was completely enveloped in that light. And then I realized that the same type of light was coming from me. I really was light. I wasn't flesh and bone. All my sensations were more alive than I'd ever experienced. Every nerve ending was alive. All my thoughts, all my experiences, everything was there. At the time, I didn't understand this intense warmth. And I remember vividly thinking to myself, you can't have that kind of warmth without heat. And I didn't realize that that warmth was compassion. The whole time this was happening, I could hear my wife's voice. And it wasn't just her voice, though. It was all of her fears, all her tension, her stress. And it was a painful thing to experience that voice. And then I was literally slammed back into my body. I mean, I woke up instantly, and almost 6 hours had passed. And immediately I was very angry at my wife. I felt that somehow she must have brought me back, and I didn't want to come back.
To have that peace.
The majority of those who have reported having near-death experiences claim the afterlife they encounter is a blissful realm infused with light. But for more than 10%, the journey beyond the brink is the stuff that nightmares are made of.
Some uninformed skeptics can physically write off the fact that this is how we die. It's, you know, like a brain to eyeball connection, and that's why everybody sees the light. Well, not everybody sees the light. And certainly a category of these people would be persons who, in the course of almost dying, go to a place where it's utterly black and terrifying.
In 1974, Patricia Young was pronounced dead on arrival at a Renton, Washington hospital. The cause of death, a gunshot wound to the throat.
Well, there was a crisis in my family life that was quite difficult. And what I did that was drastic was I took a gun and shot myself through the neck. The next thing I remember, I was suspended in a void of some sort, but I was completely unable to move. And there didn't seem to be anything at all around me. These little creatures, little beings, grotesque, hideous little creatures came up, and they seemed to be preparing me for something. They did horrible things, and you could feel the things they did. They would make holes in me, anywhere on my body, even in my cheek, in my eye socket. and they put anything that was gross or nauseating in these holes, and they got great, tremendous delight out of it. Then they departed. They didn't seem to be there anymore. Right then, I had the sense that someone was coming up behind me. I could hear this extreme raspy, heavy breathing, and it was getting closer. And I knew instinctively that, without questioning it, that it was absolute pure evil. And it was getting closer and closer. Within the very next instant, I knew it was going to be within my view, and I screamed out as loud as I could, "Oh God, please help me." And I opened my eyes, and I was alive.
Patricia is one of hundreds of people throughout the country who claim to have been to hell and back. Many of them are members of support groups, like this one in Seattle, Washington, co-founded by Dr. Kimberly Clark Sharp.
Out of a little more than 2,000 people that I've interviewed, 14% have had frightening experiences. However, that's an underreporting, because this is very painful for people because of their neighbor's judgment.
Just as with people who claim to have encountered a heaven-like afterlife, for those who have been plunged into darkness, the experience is a very intense and personal journey.
The first thing that I can remember after the accident is waking up in hell. The vision of fire all around me. Didn't feel the flames, didn't have a body. There was no day, there was no night. There were voices. I was doing whatever the voice of Satan was telling me to do.
And all of a sudden it was just really dark. It was a huge, huge space. And these forms were just full of despair, and they were all moaning.
It was still black until there was a little tiny white spot. And I thought, well, there's the light at the end of the tunnel. This is my way out. Instead, that little white dot came up, becoming a skull. It was too small to be fearsome, but it came up brighter and brighter until it was huge. I felt like his mouth was going to take me with him.
The thing that I remember that was so frightening is going into this tunnel, and I felt like I was being entrapped in cobwebs. And at the end of the tunnel, these faces, these demons.
These guys were evil. It frightened me. I started saying, you know, where's Jesus? Where's Jesus? Am I going to hell? I was begging. I said, God, please, please don't leave me out here with these spirits. I don't want to be left out here just wandering aimlessly. And I was just trying to hurry to get back to my body.
People notice an absence of light. And imagine that light is the only love known to you. And it's going away. And you're being left in absolute, isolated nothingness. It's utter abandonment. So it's not about the light. It's about the love.